It was many, many years ago when the Angry Video Game Nerd did a review of Darkman, very specifically in 2021. And they said the movie was great, but the game was a god awful piece of garbage. And for many years, I'd always heard about this, and I said I want to watch it sometime. Never did, until finally someone requested a review of this very specifically. Since I like to keep people anonymous, Sweatshirt, this one is for you. This one right here. You gave me this, and here's what's going on. Raimi's live-action comic book aims to deliver scares spiked with laughs. That it does, says Peter Travers of Rolling Stone. Liam Neeson from Taken and Oscar winner Frances McDormand Fargo stars in this explosive action-packed thriller from director Sam Raimi, the Spider-Man trilogy. When the laboratory of Dr. Peyton Westlake is blown up by gangsters, he is burned beyond recognition. Altered by an experimental medical procedure, he assumes alternate identities in his quest for revenge. Colin Frey's in Dark City, which Larry Drake, Dr. Giggles, that's funny, and Danny Hicks, Evil Dead 2, and Nicholas Worth and Swamp Thing also star. So, this one is I like this one. I really did. It's like, you can tell just by the artwork right here alone, this is going to be kind of like something that DC was going to do. This was, in fact, going to be, Sam Raimi is indeed a comic book fan, and he wanted to acquire the rights to, what was it, the crime vigilante comic of the Shadow from the 1930s. Ultimately could not. Tried to do the same thing with the Batman. He couldn't do. He said, you know what? I'm just going to take influence and create this interesting mishmash visual style of a comic book and create it and be my own. Let's also throw in some references to Universal monster movies. And what we've got is a unique, interesting take. And oh boy, this one is good. This is a interestingly violent movie, but in a good way. In a good way because it's a combination of things. There's best way how to describe it, a good entry point for 1990s superheroes that were influenced by Batman. There is no I'm Batman, but at the end there's I'm Darkman. This movie, it's got a little bit of the humorous takes of what Sam Raimi is known for in like Evil Dead 1 and 2, including the zoom in, which leads to a disfigured skull that's looking kind of like something like that. There's that trick in that, but of course there is some interesting humor. I would say about roughly 50 minutes in, there's an infamous scene in which they're both at a carnival, and he wants to try and win a prize for his wife. So he starts throwing the ball at the milk bottles. First two tries fails, and then he throws it. We get an interesting zoom in going on, and finally the bottles topple over. And then is like, hey, the pink elephant, please. And he says, nope, can't do it. Why? Because you were ahead of the line. And it's like, no, I wasn't. I was right near my wife. Nope, you were ahead of the line. You were ahead of the line. The pink elephant, please. And he says, nope, can't do it. And then eventually, trailer is right there on YouTube. It's so bizarrely funny that you just gotta like it. It's just weird done in the right way. There's also in the beginning this where the guy just gets freaking poured into some, I don't know, hydrochloric acid or something like that, and it just disfigures. I mean, he looks burnt and everything, and it's just ooh. Which leads to I guess one could say, Frankenstein's monsters approach of the tragic figure that you feel sympathy for because he is burnt beyond recognition, almost like the Invisible Man. And it's, even though that Liam Neeson is underneath 10 layers of makeup or something like that, you still feel for him because he's grappling or wrestling with the just with the just like what has he become? It's like at first he was an everyday man. Second, he becomes a vigilante, and then at the end he dislikes the mutant that he became, and ultimately the ending is it just is it's maudlin. That's the word. But of course, I cannot review this without talking about Robert Durant, who is played by Larry Drake, who starred in L.A. Law and Dr. Gales. Oh, he is such a bastard, and he's got such a retinue that is important people. Like if you can imagine a king and people that are around him, that's what a retinue is. Important people or something. His minions. There's even a guy. There's a guy named Paulie. I love the scenes. Like he's bald, and he's bald as his identity is taken, because our hero manages to like look like him through a computer, and after replicating and making himself indistinguishable from Paulie, as like manages to snake some cash that he uses for whatever. And then Durant goes up to where Paulie is and is like, I swear I was sleeping the entire time. I don't even know how I got dressed. Reveals that he's on a very nice blue suit. Sees that there are 2 tickets for, and then Durant notices there are 2 tickets for him and for Ricky, who's another guy. And then he says, Rio, huh? Stuff ensues and says, hope you have a nice flight. Throws him out of a window. That's the style of movie. It's comic book-esque. Like the long shots, the giant, like all the buildings and and what the characters have to wrestle and endure with, and it just feels so gosh darn good because it's played with such seriousness. This movie does have a dour tone to it, but you feel so good. It's like you feel sympathy for him. It's sympathy for the man who lost everything, is trying to get everything back. And it's like he does get his life back mostly through the movie. That ultimately it just ends in kind of a melancholic note. So this is a melancholic movie that just feels down. It feels down, but in a good way. So it's not. Yeah, some of this movie is fun. I still had a dang good time laughing and be like, oh my word, at some of the scenes. Don't get me wrong, but at the same time, it's just like, ooh. And of course, there's a helicopter scene, which involves a grenade launcher and spinning around and everything else, and it really is a thrill-a-minute ride. And this movie's become a cult classic. Danny Elfman does the score, and I'm like, good, because we get to hear a choir, we get to hear a lot of violins and everything else, and I'm like, good. I'm glad they're still doing this. I'm like, this is what a 1990s superhero movie should be. It's like it aims at pretty good, but it's also a good reflective movie about like what happens like when one becomes a monster and how they try and fight it, but ultimately they realize their actions are like, yeah, I don't want anything to do with this, and they just become disillusioned. That's what I got out of this. Universal thought that this movie wasn't going to be that great. It wasn't going to get too much money, but it's like it made back $40 million, so people liked it. Apparently got a 4K release, so yeah. So if you want to see a combination of Universal monster movies like The Invisible Man, Phantom of the Opera, and The Shadow, then I recommend that you watch Darkman.